and the world as we knew it was gone forever. Everything had changed so fast. We were living in a world filled with technology, a time when electricity was fueled by the sun and your clothes changed their color at the touch of a button. Everything was great, the world was spinning and we were learning more every day. That was until the asteroid came. I was only 18 at the time, too young and inexperienced for what was about to happen. I remember the day so well. I'd been at school, not paying any attention to my math teacher as he droned on about numbers. There was a loud bang and the ground started to shake, the windows smashed from vibrations and the room was filled with screams of terror. You could see the fear in our teacher's eyes. The shrill alarm sounded around the school as we all piled out of the building. My heart stopped when I saw the growing cracks in the ground. What was happening? I tried to contact my mom on my phone but it was no use. Nobody's phones were working. I watched in confusion as my clothes returned to their original white color as they lost power. Something was very wrong. All order quickly vanished as panic took over. The teacher's failed attempts to keep us all together were overpowered by the rumbling of the ground. Everyone scattered from the school and I ran as fast as I could, aiming for one place, home. As I sped through town I saw people crying and screaming as they watched their homes shatter and fall to the ground. There were fights breaking out in the streets and fires spreading from car accidents. This was really bad. The moment I saw my house my life stopped. Half of the building had crumbled and I could hear the cries of my 2-year-old brother coming from inside. I wasted no time as I scrambled through what used to be our living room. The only thing that was fueling me on was the need to get to my brother. He was screaming with all his might. I took him in my arms and held him close to my chest. "It's all right, Daniel," I cooed, looking around frantically. "Mom," I called, praying to hear her reply. My family had never been big. We had moved here last year after my father left us. I rushed into what was left of the kitchen and that's when I saw her, my mother's body crushed beneath part of the house. I ran over to her, tears blinding me. I could hear the house slowly collapsing around me but I had to get to her. Daniel's wails filled the air as I fought through the rubble. She was dead. The fact dawned on me as I held her lifeless body in my arms. Daniel called out for her as the floor started to give way above us. I took my brother, kicking and screaming, and ran out of the house just before it completely collapsed, burying my mother with it. The earth changed that day and so did I. No one saw it coming. As the asteroid passed, the world went into chaos. All technology malfunctioned and the weather became hostile. First it was tornadoes and earthquakes and then it was the heat. People started to panic and half the world's population perished within the first 6 weeks. Nothing was ever the same. People split off into groups. Some made camps in rundown cities and others took off on their own, trying to stay out of harm's way. Daniel and I joined a group of 30, mostly families from my old street. I didn't know where else we were supposed to go, so we followed the group wholeheartedly. It became clear after the first few weeks who we looked to for leadership. A middle-aged man named Nathan made most of the decisions. He was the one who kept us alive for so long. It wasn't long before our numbers started to dwindle. People from other groups became savages, the worst, taking over the towns and cities. We learned how to survive on very little and kept to save areas as we traveled. Overall, it wasn't a bad way to live. We had friends around us and our little group became our family. I should have known that it wouldn't last forever. One night a group of 6 travelers approached our camp. I was weary of them the moment they entered, but it seemed that everyone else was happy with our new friends, including Nathan. We traveled together for a few weeks and they became a part of our family. We were foolish to trust them. We had been walking all day looking for somewhere to make camp for the night. We usually kept away from the big sites, but our new friends led us closer and closer. I could see Nathan wanted to find shelter somewhere else, but from the looks of things we didn't have enough time to be picky. There was a sandstorm approaching and we needed to find shelter. Slowly and cautiously we entered the town, walking past broken buildings. No one was around and I kept my eyes peeled for any form of life. Daniel was clung to my side like always. All was quiet. The only sound came from our boots as they echoed on the ground with each step. We saw the shadows first, boxing us in like sheep to the slaughter. Daniel let out a small cry and some of the older women gasped as the reality dawned on us. We had been tricked. Our so-called friends had led us into a trap. We tried to fight back, but in the end it was futile. Nathan was the first they killed, his body covered in blood as it lay lifelessly before us. Time seemed to freeze as we saw our leader dead on the ground. The adults of the group attacked while some tried to flee. They were all killed before our eyes. Only 5 children were left standing beside me crying out in fear. We were captured and put into a dark and dingy building already filled with children of all ages. Daniel cried into my legs and I stooped down to comfort him. Don't worry, Dan. Everything will be all right, I promised as I found a damp corner that was empty. I knew it was a lie. We were probably going to all die. It was just a matter of time. I didn't want to tell him the truth. I didn't want to believe it. Every night 2 of them would come and choose one of us. Once you were chosen, you never came back. Everyone stayed silent and kept to themselves. Even the children from my old family became strangers. The 4th night they came surveying their choices. Daniel clung to me and I tried my best to hide him from their eyes. One of them looked at me, an evil grin forming on his face. That one, he called, pointing a finger straight at my brother. No, I yelled as they tugged Daniel from my arms. I stood up, scratching and clawing at the man who held my brother. I was kicked to the floor, but I stood again, screaming and hitting. It was all a blur of fear and emotion, but the moment I hit the ground for the 4th time my heart sank. My arm was broken and my nose was now pouring with blood. I couldn't force myself to stand and fight any longer. I was curled up on the floor, my tears mixing with my blood as I watched them walk towards the door with my crying brother in their arms. Stop! A small girl who looked 2 years younger than me called as she stood from her place at the back of the room. I met her eyes and she gave me a small smile. Take me instead, she offered, fearlessly walking over to the men. I watched frozen in my place as the men contemplated the trade. With a crude laugh they grabbed the girl and tossed my brother aside. The girl had sacrificed herself to save my brother's life. I didn't even know her name. After that day people seemed to band together. There was no more silence and we were no longer strangers. We decided to fight back the next time they came. There were only 7 of us who were able to give a good fight, but it was enough. The next night we made our break for freedom. We had the element of surprise on our side and we made it out of the city and hid in the nearby caves. There is only one goal now,